Not sure what the number is now, but it's the Powell River Community Forest 2025 Fall Grants Reconsideration. And I'd like to ask our corporate officer to go over the procedures involved here.
Thank you, Mayor. So I wanted to provide council with a little bit of a recap and clarify a few things, and also provide some clarification and awareness for the public as to what took place at the last meeting and where we're at on this particular item and how we're intending to move forward. So firstly, council will pick up where they left off pursuant to the draft minutes of the January 22nd council meeting. Please bear in mind that under our council procedure bylaw, the minutes only record motions which have been defeated or carried, or whether as moved or as amended. While a motion was made by the mayor in respect of the first and second active clauses of the matter, it was neither defeated nor carried, so it does not yet appear in the minutes. As a reminder, and for the benefit of the public, the motion from the mayor, seconded by Councillor Palm, was as follows: that council not approve a fall 2025 Powell River Community Forest grant of $250,000 to Youth and Family for Foundry Foundation, and that the following words be removed from the second active clause of the resolution, which accepted a number of applications that were recommended by the Powell River Community Forest Board. There were subsequent questions regarding the reconsideration process, which I have sought to clarify for council prior to this evening's continuation of the matter. In a nutshell, there are three different processes by which reconsideration may be brought to the council table. Firstly, pursuant to Section 23 of the delegation bylaw, some delegated decisions may be appealed to council for reconsideration of the delegate's decision. So it's essentially an appeal from a delegated staff decision. The second method by which a reconsideration can come to council is by Section 35 of the council procedure bylaw, which provides that a council member who voted in the majority on a matter or was not present at the meeting may move that the matter be reconsidered. The seconder on that motion can be someone who voted either way on the matter. A reconsideration under this provision is a two-step process. The first step is that council votes without debate as to the merits of the matter on whether it should be reconsidered. If that vote is not carried, the reconsideration is defeated and the chair moves on to the next item on the agenda. If the first vote is carried, then council moves on to debate the merits of the matter and vote again on it. At this point, the original motion or the original resolution is considered to be opened up and on the floor as if it had not yet been voted upon. The third method by which a reconsideration can come before council, and the process that we are following with respect to this matter, is through Section 131 of the Community Charter, which provides that the mayor may, subject to certain conditions, require that council reconsider and vote again on a matter. The statutory right associated with this process dispenses with the first step noted above with respect to the procedure under the procedure bylaw. So it does not require a vote on whether or not to reconsider the matter. Thus, when the matter is called on the agenda, the original resolution is considered to be opened up and on the floor as if it had not yet been voted upon. The chair may determine the order of speakers, and any member may put forward a procedural motion when called upon, such as division of the question or amendment, subject to rules of procedure applicable to such motions. At the last meeting, Councillor Southcott requested division of the matter in accordance with Section 31(8) of the Council Procedure Bylaw. This does not require a seconder or a vote. Thus, the minutes from that meeting reflect that this procedural step has been taken. Mayor's motion to amend was objected to by Councillors Elliott and Doubt as a procedurally improper amendment. In other words, to do the opposite intent of a motion by adding the word not, and that the appropriate course of action would simply be to vote against it if that is the council member's desired result. The mayor accepted that objection and was prepared to call a question on the first active clause, unamended, but yielded to Councillor Isaacson's request to speak to the matter when time ran out. All the foregoing leads to where council will pick up tonight. The matter is divided into 4 active clauses, and the first active clause will be before council in its original form without the word not. Mayor will determine the order of speakers before the question is called. And when council has voted on the first active clause, they will move on to the second active clause for consideration, and it will be before them with the proposed amendment to effectively strike the exceptions to the PRCF's board's recommendations. In other words, all would be approved. Again, each member of council will be provided an opportunity in accordance with the procedure bylaw to speak to the proposed amendment. And that is where we're at. If council has any questions, I'm happy to respond.
All right, we will proceed. Thank you very much. And if we sway away from the procedure bylaw that you just indicated, please bring us back online.
Will do. Thank you.
So the first item, and I will do the unusual thing of being the first one to speak to it, has regard to the funding from the community forest of $250,000. And I brought this forward for 2 reasons. The first is respect. The board of our community forest have for the last 16 years looked at all of the individuals and organizations that have submitted. In this case, there have been several submissions from Foundry. In evaluating those submissions, the board consistently saw that this would be inappropriate time to fund Foundry. The second important point is to understand what is the cost associated with developing Foundry as laid out by Foundry to community forests and to the public. Foundry hired a Kelowna firm to give them a Class 4 estimate on the cost of renovating the facility so it could be used from Foundry. That estimate was over $6.6 million without tax consideration. Anybody who knows anything about Class 4 estimates knows that at best, they come in 20 or 30% higher and often can come in 100% higher. And just look at the initial Class 4 estimate of our waste treatment facility. I believe Councillor Southcott at one point was quite disturbed that it had reached 60 million. So in essence, what Foundry wants to do is to raise somewhere between $6 and $9 million to renovate a facility that it does not own. In contrast, if you look at Campbell River, where the John Howard Society did a major renovation, they did it on a building which they owned. So if you look at their financial statements, since they did that renovation, you could see that they've accumulated significant asset value, which has allowed them to do many more things because it's a lot easier to get funding when you have good, solid financial statements. So in a nutshell, I think that we should respect what community forests recommend, and we should simply wait until Foundry has the money that would make it realistic that they'd be able to proceed. And at that point, the community forest knows that that money will actually be used rather than sitting in an account, which means that other community organizations will not have the opportunities that they would like. So we'll start with Councillor Almeida and then work around.
Thank you. Interesting food for thought. I don't believe I'm ready yet to vote against this, vote for this motion. Oh, sorry. Vote against this motion. So I still think I'm in favor of the original motion as it was before.
Councillor Arston, do you have any comments, questions?
Council appointed me as liaison to Foundry, which means that I sit on what was called the anchor table, and the anchor table has been combined with the leadership table, I believe it's called. And so I get to learn about Foundry, what they've been up to, how they're working, the partners that are involved, tour space, and get to know their work. I wanted to highlight a couple things that they shared with council, just for to have on the record of a council meeting and recording, because I know that there's lots of information being shared about Foundry and community, and I want to make sure that Foundry can be heard from directly. And so just a couple of items. Youth and Family was selected as a host agency for Foundry qathet due to its long-standing commitment to youth mental health services. They were asked to step forward as a host agency when Foundry BC released an expression of interest. Municipal support for other Foundry centers has been crucial, taking various forms, such as providing land, funding co-located youth centers, and advocating for community safety improvements. Youth and Family has been operating in the region for almost 30 years, has a strong reputation for its programs and services for youth and families. The organization was chosen as the host agency following a rigorous review process by Foundry Central Office. My computer wants to restart. I have to tell it to not. And the fundraising and support, they have a comprehensive fundraising plan with clearly defined milestones and funding targets. The project has over $3 million in funding requests currently in progress. And I wanted to share the architect and the designer who are deeply involved in this project. The designer actually was involved even before Foundry was named as Foundry, was involved in designing and operating the first two foundries in the province, deeply involved in a staged fundraising process like this, where not all of the money is raised before work starts, is the model that foundries use. And so the support of Foundry BC, the provincial agency that supports foundries across the province, has indicated that this is going as is to be expected. And I think it's important to note that we as the community forest and the city has never really been involved in granting to such a huge capital project. The scale of this project is beyond anything that we've been involved in before. So it feels different, and that's okay. But I think indicating municipal support for it early on is really important. I also wanted to address the respect for the Community Foundation Board. And, it is tricky. I think the council has had a long history of supporting the recommendations of the Community Forest Board, but it's our job not to, quote unquote, rubber stamp, but to consider the recommendations very seriously and weigh them and vote on them. And so when I looked at the finances and the opportunity costs, and the opportunity cost meaning that what community forest provides to our community also means that money can't go towards other things that ultimately we need to tax for. I'm looking at this holistically, and so I think, what am I indirectly willing to tax for? And it's programs and services for youth. It's been really disappointing to see services for youth become so politicized in our community. to me, this is something that often a community gets behind and supports, because programs and services, and especially space for use in this community, have been yearned for so long, and we have this opportunity, and I want to see the city to continue to support it. This is one option that we have. We don't need to give land, but we can make a financial contribution to the very substantial renovations that will take them decades into the future with their long-term lease. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. I do support this recommendation. I've worked with youth for off and on through my life. We have all sorts of problems in this community: homelessness, addictions, mental health, etc., and they're increasing. In fact, from a crisis standpoint, I think that this is it's not just looming, it's an increasing crisis. Young people are challenged as much as any other sector of our population. Starting, I think it was about 20, 25 years ago, Iceland looked at exactly what we've got right now and questioned what to do about it. They came upon athletic programs and programs exactly like Foundry, and they spent the money and did that. Then, about 10 years later, they looked back at the economics or the financial outcome of that, and they found that all the money that had been spent, like this program, on this program, it turned out that the overall cost to society was much less than had that money been spent on addictions, mental health programs to fix problems that this is designed to prevent. I have believed in prevention. There's this old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think that that's just wisdom we all believe in. And that's what this is about. So that's why I support it. Those programs went through Europe as well. We're behind. Unfortunately, we maybe haven't had to spend this kind of money yet, but kids have been, and young people have been suffering for a long time increasingly. And they don't have much of a voice. There's not that many young people here. There are some, and it's awesome. Yeah, like my son was. But anyway, that's what we want to have happen. And we do have sports in this town, but we don't have this. This is a worthwhile investment. It is prevention. I totally support that.
Councilor Dowd, do you have comments, questions?
I do. And I notice that the rumble from the crowd is getting longer and louder with each speaker. It'd be nice to be able to hear what the speakers around the table are saying. So if you would give us the pleasure of doing that, I would appreciate that. Oh, well, I just want to talk about what we have in front of us. If we pass the motion that's in front of us on the screen, that will be council continuing to do what we previously decided on this issue of Foundry, which is granting them $250,000 for the Foundry application 285 to the community forest. Okay? $6 million is not a dauntingly huge project from my point of view. Been involved in many projects that are 100 and 1,000 times bigger than that. It's all about management. I share to some extent the mayor's concern. Money that the community forest has put into McClat, for example, has gone into renovations and improvements in a building that's owned by the regional hospital district. If McClat had been unsuccessful in getting all the money together and getting all of their renovations done, the asset with the money put in would have been the property of the regional hospital district. Foundry is not in that situation. They are leasing a building. If the project goes to a certain extent and the $250,000 is spent and there's not enough to finish it, eventually the project will go back to the owner of the building who is leasing it to Foundry. That's a risk. It's a risk that doesn't happen if the investment is happening to a property that the city owns, like the McLeod Recovery Center is owned by the Regional Hospital District, or like the Timberlane properties where the Scout Hall and the Cadet Hall and everything are on city property there, and we put money through the community forest into fixing those up. But I've heard what the community is telling us about Foundry, what many of the organizations have been writing to council to tell us about the need for it. I understand that. I've balanced that need with what the community would be providing. And at the end of the day, the last time we had a vote on this, I was voting in favor of the 250,000 because I think there is money to do that in the Community Forest Reserve. And I'd be willing to put that forward in hopes of getting a positive project. It's not the only project that we could use. Okay? There are literally hundreds of health-related and human-related programs that we could have. We need more facilities for women at risk of violence. Where do they go? Where do you go? You get shelter if you're a woman who's at risk of violence in this community. Where do you go if you want to get alcohol or drug treatment? Because I think McLeod is full right now. We could use more of that. All that requires money, and the decisions that we are making as a council is a decision on what to prioritize. Well, my choice last time we voted on this, and will be again this time, is to use 250,000 of Community Forest Reserve money to put down to help Foundry get moving ahead. We had a tour. Council members had a tour of the new facility. We looked it all over. We talked about when the money with the CAO, we talked about when money would be transferred. I believe no money would be transferred until a building permit is in place. That's a little ways down the road, and you have to have a lot better cost estimate. You have to have a better idea where we're going, and you have to have more of an idea that you will complete all of the funding that you need. So I'm willing to say yes to that. Part of the reason I voted on it, because I had made a motion at the same time, or we were discussing the other one, to include the other things that council had decided to remove from the community forest recommendations. I think we'll be talking about the other clause after this one. If this motion succeeds, I will be in favor of reconsidering that motion to change it. So we actually are doing all the things the community forest recommended. So that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm voting for. And I hope everybody understands at the end of the day, that if you vote in favor of this, you're voting to donate $250,000 to Youth and Family for Foundry.
Councillor Elliott, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, I'd like to speak to the motion, Your Worship.
Okay.
So just for folks who might not be aware, the last time we spoke about this was on the 4th of December regular council meeting, and there was a lot said there as well. The tour that Councillor Dowd mentioned, I also went on that tour. I learned some new things since the last time I talked about it. And one of those new things I learned was the lease agreement that was under negotiation at the time was nearly finished, and completion of that lease would trigger application for building permit, and they figured that would be February-ish. The architect that was hired was refining the design to downsize the costs so that they could fit within a lower budget than what their Class D was at. These are questions I asked on the tour. They were happy to answer for me. Some of the things that I may not have had a chance to mention in the last meeting were that having been following along and asking questions all along, the Foundry did come and do a delegation at the regional district as well. The questions about choice of place was talked about then, and we asked why they would not have chosen something they could own, and they said that was considered along with a number of locations throughout the community, and it looked like it would triple the cost And that is part and parcel with the price of land and buildings and construction today. So many of the foundries, including the Campbell River one that was built in and established before the huge uptake in prices during the pandemic, would not have had to deal with the same prices as we are currently dealing with. And the price of doing a new build or buying another building was going to make the price prohibitive, like buying and then renovating. And it wasn't likely to be successful. So the avenue they chose for the lease was a good one for a number of reasons, including that the space is empty. The person who owns it was willing to put in upwards of $900,000 to $1 million to the building as well, knowing that they would, you know, they do own the building. And there were things that were needed that they are going to cover. And so, and that's a much bigger contribution than the one we have. The province is putting in 1.5 million toward that as well. So those are all very significant contributions. Many of the granting organizations that are on the books right now look at what the community is doing to support before they make their decisions. And so I think it's important that we do contribute to the local foundry to make it likely to be able to receive more funding from outside agencies and other foundations. So to try to delay till they've had all of these decisions made is to make it less likely for them to receive the funding from other agencies. Many funding agencies won't fund where the local community has not when it comes to grants and things like that. That's true of our Arts Council. It's true of many organizations that we give regular grants to, and they get the bulk of the rest of their money elsewhere because they get to leverage that money. So we regularly like to encourage the leveraging aspect of our funding so that we're getting as much outside or more as what we're putting in. We negate the possibility of doing that. The services for the Foundry are incredibly needed in our community. I have 5 kids, 5 grandkids. Bulk of my kids are grown now and have kids of their own. And it's always been a struggle to navigate services for children. We did a lot of traveling out of town to BC Hospital, BC Children's Hospital. Sometimes you have to put your child in institute or in health facilities that are outside of your community. It becomes extremely difficult to do that. We have no prevention for avoiding those kinds because the outpatient services aren't available for some mental health conditions for children in our community. It's almost entirely impossible to get psychiatrist appointments for your children inside of Powell River. So the facility would provide avenues for child psychiatrists to make appearances in Powell River rather than having everybody go to them. And so that travel is extremely hard for people who are young. The state of cost of housing in our community affects overall mental health of all young people who struggle to get ahead in our community, and services to provide advice and help in those regards would also be available through the Foundry. So I'm still in favor of the motion. I think the building permits are forthcoming very soon. The architect assures me we're right on schedule, and she has a lot of experience with foundries and building foundries and being part of foundry projects. And she didn't have concerns for their process or how it works. At this point, she's seen nothing but positive vibes coming for that. And I want to help our foundry become a reality. And I think there's a lot of people in our community that support that.
Councillor, please, can we hold the comments? Councillor Palm, do you have a question or a comment?
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. Through the chair, I have a few comments. First of all, you'll notice the motion on the screen. I seconded that, the motion that the mayor had made 2 weeks ago. And I seconded it for a number of reasons. And there's been a lot more information over the last 2 weeks that has come forward. And I still support our community forest board to the extent that I can. I have nothing but respect. And when Councillor Dowd tells you that $6 million is not a lot of money, I beg to differ. Because it took 20 years for our community forest board working hard in our watershed to provide $31 million to help rebuild our community. Let's never lose sight of our community forest board. Secondly, when we talk about cost, our mill site is down. We've lost over $2 million in annual taxation. That falls on the residents of our community. Let's not lose sight of the hard times our city is in financially. And we need to tighten our belt, not provide money for programs that, according to our community forest board, are not ready to receive. I'm sorry, but that was the word we got from our board that did their due diligence. They work hard and they don't give money frivolously. For example, the climbing wall that's in the town site, hundreds of thousands of dollars went into a leased building. They had one concern, that if that went down, that climbing wall could be repurposed somewhere else. I'm not sure this is the same situation with repurposing what's going on at the site that's been chosen. And they weren't in favor of putting $250 at risk. They were fine with $125. I've talked to our community forest board. I know them well. They are not against supporting youth in this town, and I am certainly not against supporting youth in this town. I worked my first 40 years in this community starting in 1984 in the school district for School District 47, helping youth every single day of the week. That's what I do. And that's why I'm here, still serving the good people of this community. And I will do that until the day I'm finished. But when it comes to cost, the other thing that we found out this week is that at the Regional Hospital District Board, our two representatives took it upon themselves to make a motion for $1 million from the Regional District Hospital Board. That's funded 50% by the city, the taxpayers, through borrowing. That's your taxes, which would be a lot higher over a number of years, and the regional district. That has to work its way through the pipeline. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And here's the main important question on the table at the regional district. And that is, they have a safeguard in place that if they were to give that $800 to Foundry, it's not given to them until the Foundry is designated by the minister, Josie Osborne, who was elected when I was 17 years ago from Ucluelet. She has to authorize that that Foundry is going to become a healthcare facility for further funding. They're not there yet. That's why the Community Forest Board is not really excited about putting $250,000 up that could disappear. And it may not even come to reality. So we have to safeguard our public funds. And that's why this motion is important. I can live with this motion. I'm sorry, Mayor, but I can live with this motion because it's in the right direction to support youth, but with one condition. And that is it's tied to the Foundry being designated by that minister, Josie Osborne, as a healthcare facility. I will put my hand in the air right now and support that, because then those funds are not put at risk. That's what we have to safeguard. Your tax dollars. And
Okay. All right.
And, you know, the one thing at the end of the last meeting, the mayor asked an important question, and I've got to get to the bottom of it because he mentioned something about conflict of interest. And I don't like to go there, but I have to ask it in this particular case because when that question was asked of certain councillors that may be in conflict, I saw Councillor Elliott putting her hand in the air. She was going to speak to it, and I'm just wondering, Councillor Elliott, what were you going to say?
I'm just going to interrupt here, Councillor Palm. I think we're heading down a long path here.
Okay.
Maybe come back to that.
Disregard my question.
Okay.
But Mayor, if we can make an amendment to this that safeguards these funds by tying it to a healthcare facility designation, I'm all for it.
Thank you. So I've got a few additional comments. So I probably was the first council member to spend probably 50 hours doing an evaluation of Foundry in the province. As a result, I made a donation to Foundry. And the donation specifically was to allow them to hire an expert who could help them come up with a fundraising plan. So Foundry will remember the first time they came to council, I asked them if they had a fundraising plan. And they said no, but that when it was finished, they would send it to me. I've never received that fundraising plan. So as far as I know, they haven't actually put together strategic objectives into a fundraising plan. So that in itself raises a major concern. It boggles my mind that we're actually discussing the value of Foundry. Clearly, Foundry has significant value. But if they don't have a strategic plan that will allow this project to be finished, they will cause unbelievable long-term harm to the youth of Powell River. And that's why I'm saying, take a step back. If Ed Levy and others want to get together and form a fundraising campaign, so there's actually a hope that you can get $68 million in time to make this happen, that's great. But if you fail, you're going to have a very long-term impact on the youth of Powell River. Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that this, this recording, people will watch it and it will be reported in the news. I highly, highly recommend any reporting of this meeting to be fact-checked rather than stated verbatim, because I think we're obviously missing a voice of the Foundry at this meeting. A lot of us think we know what's going on, and we're sharing the best information that we have, and we are not the final sources of all that information. Please fact check. Thank you.
Yes, I'm just, Councillor Armida, Councillor Southcott, Councillor Dowd, Councillor Isaac. Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. Because it is a public recording and I don't want any confusion anywhere, I am not in any way, shape, or form in conflict with this project. I don't belong to that nonprofit. I don't stand to gain financially from this project at all. And I have no link to Foundry other than that I'm an advocate for all youth in our community. And so I'm not sure why the question ever came up in the first place. And if I did put my hand up, it was probably to answer the question just as I have now. So I just didn't want confusion about that happening. I didn't even realize people believe that of me. And there is no conflict for me in this project.
Okay.
And I have no idea why people would think that.
Okay, let's move on. We have Councillor Palm.
Sorry, Your Worship, I have to ask a question. You know, I've alluded to an amendment to what's on that screen. Corporate officer, am I allowed to make a friendly amendment?
Through the chair, Councillor Palm, you could make an amendment certainly along the lines of where I think you're going with this, and I wouldn't term it necessarily a friendly amendment. It's just an amendment being proposed, and it will have to be voted upon and spoken to by all the other council members.
Yeah, so Ms. Walls, I would simply like to make an amendment that after the period there, we make the comma and say, kids and family application, subject to the Foundry being designated as a health care facility by the province of British Columbia.
Second that for discussion. Any discussion? Yes, Councillor Elliott.
The reason that was part of the motion at the hospital district, because that's the legislation they operate under. It's not a legislation the city operates under and isn't entirely appropriate to our grant project unless we specifically had made that a requirement before we did MICLAT or many of the other things that we've funded for health, which it is over at the hospital board. It's always been that way. That's the legislation they work under. I won't vote for this because I don't think it's entirely in order, and I don't think it's consistent with the approvals we've made in the past.
Any further comments before I call the vote on the amendment?
Yeah.
Just a second, Councillor
Sorry.
Palm, go to Councillor Doubt and then Councillor Palm.
I agree with Councillor Elliott's point on this. The regional, if you'd like to know why, I may give you a chance to hear it.
Okay,
I'll wait until there's some quiet.
yeah, let's,
There's only one way that the regional hospital district can communicate funds that they raise through taxes. Their rules, their reason for existing is to support healthcare facilities, and only that. That's why I believe when I was watching the regional hospital district minutes, or the meeting that was taking place, they made the motion that they would provide this $800,000, not $1 million, $800,000, provided that the minister declared Foundry and Powell River a healthcare facility. It's required by their legislation, required by who they are. Those requirements don't apply to the city. The city's talking about a far less amount of money, $250,000, and I don't think we should be tying it to other levels of government.
Councillor Palm.
Yes, Your Worship. The reason for my amendment is very simple. Even though it's not tied to the hospital board and what they do over there, this is simply a safeguard to make sure that those $250,000 that we would donate through our community forest have a safeguard and just don't disappear if they don't get their designation or you can't raise the funds. There are so many things in terms of the $9 million that are required to make this facility work that we do not know at this point in time. It's that simple. Thank you, Your Worship.
Great. Councillor Armida.
Thank you, Mayor. CFO is online. Okay. Maybe the CFO has the answer to this question, but correct me if I'm wrong, for community forest projects, are funds not issued after projects are completed? Or at least not in advance of processing happening?
Through the chair, my understanding is that they would be subject to an agreement as to when the funds would be provided.
Thank you.
Question.
Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know who it should go to, but when we're administering or making decisions about funding programs or any kind of programs, and we have policies and so forth in effect, would not adding a criteria at the end of the process be considered administratively difficult or Is there a risk attached to that? Or do we not have the right people here to answer that question?
Through the worship, through your worship, I think it depends on the circumstances. As a general rule, council should follow their policies. They don't necessarily have to always follow their policies, and over the years, numerable councils have not followed their policies, but there's a reason why they're in place, and it's best practice to follow them. We'd have to see about the individual. I mean, that's a bit of a broad question. If we're very specific about this and the guidelines that are in place, it's a mix of policy from the city of Powell River as well as the guidelines through the Powell River Community Forest. So it's a bit of a mix.
So my last comment is, and this comes from having probably raised $30 million for a variety of community organizations over the years. When I studied Foundry, specifically, it was to assist youth 12 to 24 who had mental health challenges. And so if I was out raising money and I could say that this program has been endorsed through the health hospital organization in Powell River, that would eliminate a lot of questions from potential funders. So I'm in support of this amendment because I think it would facilitate the significant fundraising challenge that our local Foundry has. Any additional? Councillor Palm.
Last comment, Your Worship, in regards to the amendment, and that is, with this amendment, a very important message is sent to the minister responsible for granting the Foundry as a healthcare facility in combination with our hospital board that is put funding up, which is still working along that same line. So this just adds to the initiative for the minister to grant such to the Foundry, which I'm sure everybody here representing the Foundry wants, because it will help you raise a great deal more in terms of funding. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, we have an amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Look at, you really don't want me to clear the chamber, right? You've come out, you want to listen, okay? And subsequently, after you've listened, you can meet in the driveway, whatever, and provide comment. But I will clear. And who said that? Stand up, please.
Stand up, Ted.
Would you leave, please? Would you escort him out? You. Okay, we're going to recess for 5 minutes, and I'm asking that you not come back in after the 5 minutes. Okay? Okay. Okay, let's reconvene. Okay, I'm going to ask our corporate officer to indicate where were we before we called
Mr. Mayor and Council, the vote was called on the amendment, and it was defeated 5-2, and then a recess was called. So
Thank you very
we're
much.
back to the motion without the amendment.
Okay, could you repeat what you just said? It wasn't coming through very clearly. Just repeat where we
Can't
were.
hear you.
Sorry, to repeat, the motion on the amendment was defeated 5-2. And so we're back to the main motion, as you see on the screen, with no amendment.
Thank you. So I'm going to call the main motion. All in favor? Opposed? Passes. So we'll now move to the next motion. And do we have it on the screen so that everybody can see it? Okay, the motion is in front. Let's start with any questions. I'm sorry, I'm going to go through the same process. Councillor Armida?
Just for clarification, Mayor, your intent here is to approve all the grants that the community force recommended in November. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct.
So further for clarification for that, because what was in the notice of motion before didn't include I believe it was 195,000 that MCLAT had recommended for some cost overruns on their project. So I'm curious, I guess, in your intent, is that to include the 195 now, or is it still your goal to not? Because I believe what's on the screen would include the 195 to MCLAT.
I can't see what you're talking about.
Okay, maybe I've misread my notes. Okay, sorry.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you. So just for clarity, I know you provided a good, through the mayor to staff, you provided a good overview at the beginning, but it's been a while. So we are, the lines that are crossed out there, we are now on, like we're voting on the amendment to cross all of those out first.
Through the mayor, that's correct.
Okay, so we're voting on the amendment to cross all of those out. And then we would go to the main motion. Yeah. All right. Okay, so are we talking about questions right now? Or are we in debate?
Any
Or in
questions?
debate? I don't have questions. I'm ready to get into debate when you want to do debate.
So, Southcott, any questions? All right. One more comment like that, and I'm clearing the whole council chamber. You have to learn some respect because you expect respect. So I want to see reciprocity here. This is the last opportunity you have to stay in the council tonight. Councillor Southcott. Councillor Doubt.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand the way we're dealing with this. So I believe, and I'm going to ask the corporate officer, if we vote in favor of this motion, does that mean that council will approve all of the grants included in the BC Forest recommendation or the community forest recommendation? I think that's what it means. I want to confirm that that's the truth.
Through the chair, yes, Councillor Doubt, that is correct. You're voting on the motion to amend, which would strike out all of those exceptions and simply leave remaining all of the recommendations from the Community Forest Board.
Okay, I think you added an extra word in there, but I think we've got a motion. We're either going to vote in favor or opposed. It's not an amendment. It is a motion that council approve all the grants included in the community forest recommendation.
Sorry, through the mayor, Councillor Doubt, this is a motion to amend. It's simply being shown on the screen in this particular manner so that you see what is left. If you pass the motion to amend, you're simply left with the council approve all the grants included in the community forest recommendation. So you are voting on an amendment to the second active clause.
Councilor Lilly, you have any questions, comments?
I could do debate if we're in questions. I think I'm clear now. The two councillors that have asked this question, I've got a couple answers to it. So I think I understand the next vote is to vote on the amendment.
Tom?
Yes, thank you. Just want to make the point that during the community forest deliberations and the working groups deliberations on all of these items, the Community Forest Board recommended all of these. They did not recommend at that time the Foundry. The Foundry is now passed. Congratulations. But these good people that run all of these nonprofits need our support. So if I vote in favor of this, all of those groups will get their funding, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Bonita, okay. Councillor Isaacson?
Yeah, if we're in debate now, I have some comments on the amendment. So to bring us back to the process of how we got here, earlier in the summer, the Community Forest Board was looking for direction from council and the types of priorities we wanted to see in some of the recommendations and applications that came forward to us for recommendations. And we provided a few, including affordable housing, health and recreation opportunities for youth, reconciliation, and healthcare, health facilities. And so when we shared that with the that passed at council, when the recommendations came back, there were some that didn't align with that request from council to the Community Forest Board. And so some of these items, when we went through discussion, ended up being removed. I can't speak to everybody else's rationale, but for me, it was getting back to the core of what we asked the Community Forest Board when it came to priorities. There are also a couple in there that were removed for other reasons. The Cycling Association, the Community Forest, indicated that they thought that they could do some of that work and didn't necessarily need to be granted. It could come out of core community forest operations itself. And Friends of Qathet, while a very worthwhile cause, actually contravenes our policy. It is about operations. And if we are granting for operations and granting for food or for clothing for organizations, there's a whole swath of organizations that would have been, that should have applied for funding that haven't because they didn't think that they were eligible. And Friends of Qathet, while a worthwhile endeavor, doesn't align with the policy. And so there's more than a few reasons that we removed some of these grants. And I would prefer to stick with that to align with the priorities that Community Forest asked for and we provided to them. And also to align ourselves with Community Forest saying that they would be willing to take on the work for the Cycling Association. They could do that in their operations, and to align us with our policy of what these projects are, what this funding is meant to grant for, which is generally like things as opposed to like capital investments as opposed to more operational expenses and such. So as a whole, I don't support this amendment. I would get closer to supporting this amendment if Friends of Qathet and Cycling Association were put back on as exceptions, but we'll see where council takes the discussion.
Thank you, Worship. 6 of these organizations at least are grant recipients in the past, not so distant past. There are various reasons, and we discussed this at length in previous meetings, for denying. My own global reason is that it's the same reason has been expressed by at least Councillor Palm, if not more of us, and that is concern for our fiscal situation right now. There are other sources of money for some of these, and there are a whole bunch of reasons why these specific organizations were selected to be excluded. And that's as far as I'm going to go with this.
Doubt?
Yeah, I'm just going to say I am in favor of this amendment. It's actually the same amendment I tried to make at the previous meeting. I think when the Community Forest Board recommended that we should donate funds from the Community Forest Board to these organizations, I thought we should respect their recommendations. You look at them, the Ferns of Qathet, other ones are actually quite small amounts of money compared even to what's being provided for the Foundry, and they contribute excellent projects for the community, and all of them you'll see are used to support the work of volunteers in the community. They're all seed money, they're all providing enough to get a project beginning, but not complete it. What's needed to complete the projects are the volunteers, and what encourages them to go is the fact that they are provided by the city with some money to start their project along, pay for tools, pay for the things they absolutely have to buy, so that the volunteers can contribute to their community. And that's what I find is the most important thing about this community, is the willingness of people to stand up and work for the community and for the other people in the community out of selflessness. And I think supporting people with these grants is a key part of what we do in our community. It's not going to break the bank. We've got money in the Community Forest Reserve that we can use, and hopefully we can go ahead.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I've been working really, really hard on community forests and updating a lot of things and working together with the community forest. I've attended as many of the board meetings as I've been available for. Sometimes I'm in conflict with other meetings, but for the most part, I've been there. Some of these projects on this list were indeed taken out for very legitimate reasons. I love them all. I want to provide money to them all, but they don't all meet our criteria for this particular intake. We went to the trouble of having many meetings and coming up with criteria for this intake. And as much as I'd like to do that, if we make motions for what we're doing and then don't follow it, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So if we're going to come up with criteria, we should follow our own criteria. So the motions that we made in November, is that right? As a result of the meetings with the working group, the working group recommended the following: that council set a maximum for allocation for nonprofit grants of $640,000, and that Powell River Community Forest Working Group recommended that council confirm their priorities for the Powell River Community Forest Nonprofit Grant Program. And so council did exactly that. They set the maximum for fall allocation as per the recommendation from the working group at $640,000. And they also confirmed their current priorities for the Powell River Community Forest Nonprofit Grant Program are for health-related facilities, affordable housing, recreation, culture and social goals for youth, and reconciliation. And that was the priorities that council had decided should be used as a screening tool for recommendations and for what we were prepared to put grants out for that particular intake. The Friends of the Qathet already didn't meet our criteria for capital type projects. And so we're not really interested in expanding our program to not capital because that opens a door, and it's also not been fair to all of the other organizations that could use funding like the food bank and whatnot, to just do one-offs like that. You need to stick to your process, otherwise you're being unfair to the community at large. The there's people telling me to shut up, Mayor.
Could you continue, please?
It's just hard because it's, anyway. So the Qathet Cycling Association, if you go back to the 4th of December meeting, or the committee of the whole before that rather, when the president of the community forest group, or sorry, board was here presenting his recommendations, he specifically said that one could definitely be done by the community forest through operations. And I asked him, well, what is your preference? Is it your preference for us to do a grant? Or is it your preference for you to do it yourself? Because I'd like to know. He said it was their preference to do it themselves. And so he would be happy to, he said the only reason he put it on the list was if council preferred to take credit for that, then he wanted to give them the opportunity to do that. It was going to get done regardless. And so that was the reason that was on the list. Many of the others that came off the list are ones that were just given a grant in the spring or didn't meet the criteria that we spelled out for this particular grant intake. So while I'd like to approve most of those, I believe the trail one is going forward anyway, because that's what the community forest told me. They did not meet the criteria that we, the council, before we even knew what the applications were going to be, we made criteria for that particular intake. And so I think that it behooves us to stick to our own criteria that we put forward at a prior meeting to narrow down the focus of the grant program for this particular intake. So unfortunately, we kind of caused this by creating criteria that we should be following. Otherwise, what is the point of us being in contravention of previous motions unless we're also reconsidering that motion for the criteria? I don't want to second guess that work that we've already got done in order to narrow things down. I don't think that's a step forward in financial management.
Made this point several times. Do you have any new points you'd like to make?
Step forward in financial management. Thank you.
Do you have any?
Yes, Your Worship, I have a couple of responses to what was said here. First of all, in regards to Councillor Isaacson referring to policy and regarding these items on our screen. Well, she brought forward the policy not too long ago. All of those items have been supported for a number of years in our community by the Community Forest Board. The only two new items on that screen are Kelly Creek Church, which I don't believe I've seen before, and we've supported other churches in our community. This is in the regional district. And the other one is the Gillies Bay Tennis Court on Texada, and we have supported other tennis courts south of town and our own through the Community Forest Board. So to say that these don't fit the criteria is a falsehood. They certainly fit the community forest criteria that we have supported for 17 or 20 years, I should say. So first of all, that one. And then Councillor Southcott speaking out of both sides of his mouth today.
Point of order, Chair.
Saying
Respect.
Yes.
he's
I'm out.
worried about costs.
Councillor Palm,
Yeah, well, no.
just quiet. Now, you've made a derogatory comment about Councillor Southcott. Would you please either apologize or leave the council meeting? All right,
Sorry.
everybody that's booed, get out. Is our RCMP here to assist them? We'll get them back. If you've got any respect, all of you that booed will leave now.
Worship,
Obviously,
I will officially
quiet.
apologize so that we
Okay.
can carry on.
Okay, obviously, there's no respect of anybody in this audience, so when the RCMP comes, all of you will be removed. Disgusting. Great, Councillor Palm.
Okay. So I think I've finished, Your Worship. I think I've said enough to support our community force with respect.
Thank you. So my comment is, which is opposed to Councillor Elliott and Councillor Isaacson, I believe all of these meet the criteria which we discussed. Having somebody interpret something to support where they want to go and suggest that Gillis Bay tennis courts are not promoting social activity and social wellness. To me, cannot accept that. So I'm in support of this. So any further comment before I call? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. We'll now go to
Main motion.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Main motion.
all in favor of the
Sorry, Mr.
segment. We
Mayor.
want to get it on the screen.
Corporate officer wants your attention.
Yes.
Or the amendment motion has passed, but now you need to call the main motion as amended.
Thank you. Any discussion on the main motion as amended? All in favor of the main motion as amended? Opposed? Passes. Thank you. We will now move to
We have to decide whether we're going to continue past 9 first.
is there a consensus that we would like a 3-minute break? Council? Anybody opposed to a 3-minute break? Okay, this will give the RCMP time to clear most of the room.
Just a comment, Your Worship. I just have a comment, and that is that the 3 minutes break